Tonight on NewsWatch, cracking down on human rights violators. President Obama launches a new campaign to stop mass killings around the globe.
Plus, the Eurozone scrambles to avoid financial collapse, why experts say the worst is yet to come.
And remembering the life and legacy of Chuck Colson, how this towering Christian leader touched hundreds of thousands through his ministry. All this and more tonight on NewsWatch. President Obama announces new sanctions against Iran and Syria. Good evening, I'm Lee Webb.
And I'm Wendy Griffith. The sanctions are aimed at individuals that help Iran and Syria use new technology to crack down on its own people. The president also announced a series of steps to promote human rights and prevent genocide around the world. His comments came during a visit today at Washington's Holocaust Museum. The president also took the opportunity to restate his commitment to Israel. John Waggy starts our coverage with tonight's top story.
Holocaust survivor and author Elie Wiesel introduced the president, who said that as the nation's chief executive and a father, his duty is to remind future generations that the Holocaust happened.
We must tell our children about a crime unique in human history, the one and only Holocaust. 6 million innocent people, men, women, children, babies, sent to their deaths just for being different. For being Jewish.
The president said an individual commitment to the Jewish people also extends to American support for Israel.
When attempts are made to delegitimize the state of Israel, we oppose them. When faced with a regime that threatens global security and denies the Holocaust and threatens to destroy Israel, the United States will do everything in our power to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon.
The president said the U.S. will target Iran, Syria, and other regimes which use brutality against their own people.
Indeed, today we're taking another step. I've signed an executive order that authorizes new sanctions against the Syrian government and Iran and those that abet them for using technologies to monitor and track and target citizens for violence.
The president mentioned South Sudan as one success story in his administration's fight against genocide. It's the world's newest nation, but today hospital officials try to cope with the aftermath of bombings and shootings from a war that threatens to wipe out a ceasefire with the Sudanese government.
The situation in the hospital now is much alarming. We are now stretched to the limit. We are receiving all the military casualties and the civilian alike on top of our normal civilian, our normal patient that have been dealing with.
This weekend, Mr. Obama used his bully pulpit to intervene, calling both sides in the largely Muslim-Christian conflict to account.
We know what needs to happen. The government of Sudan must stop its military actions, including aerial bombardments. It must give aid workers the access they need to save lives. And it must end its support for armed groups inside the South. Likewise, the government of South Sudan must end its support for armed groups inside Sudan, and it must cease its military actions across the border.
John Waggy, CBN News.
A spring nor'easter is working its way up the East Coast. There are winter storm warnings from West Virginia to New York. By the time the storm system passes, 9 states, we're told, will be drenched and several others covered in snow. Ephraim Graham reports.
With May only a week away, it's finally starting to look like winter up north. Up to a foot of snow is expected for the higher elevations of Pennsylvania and New York. And a winter storm warning was issued in parts of northeast Ohio. Many trees already have leaves, thanks to an early spring. And forecasters say they'll catch more snow. So we could see many downed trees and power outages.
I did a little bit of shopping and everything and try to take care of some and rent some errands. So just trying to prepare because you just never know.
This late winter blast caps off an unusual winter season. It kicked off early in the north with that pre-Halloween snowstorm. Then we saw record-breaking heat. Now this. Still, residents say they've come to expect this sort of thing. Western New York has seen snow as late as the first week in May. But while the storm is not unprecedented, it still leaves many wishing for it to end.
I put it down to the tempestuous nature of spring, really, but I'm willing the hot weather back again.
If it's not snow, it's high winds and heavy rain for the rest of the East Coast, and lots of it. From Florida to New England, storms are delivering up to 7 inches of rain.
Pretty miserable. It makes the day pretty gloomy.
While the rain may be inconvenient, it's much needed. Some areas have had a rainfall deficit of 6 inches since March 1st. Ephraim Graham, CBN News.
Well, George Zimmerman is now out on bail while he waits for his trial. The judge set his bail at $150,000. Zimmerman is charged with the death of 17-year-old Trayvon Martin. He claims he shot the unarmed teen in self-defense. Zimmerman's location is being kept secret for his own safety. He's also wearing an electronic monitor, and he has a curfew and must stay away from alcohol and firearms. The trial is likely still a year away.
And the trial began today for former presidential candidate John Edwards. The North Carolina Democrat is accused of using campaign contributions to cover up an extramarital affair. Edwards pleaded not guilty to the 6 felony charges. The trial should last about 6 weeks. Prosecutors expecting to argue that Edwards was the mastermind behind the cover-up. Edwards denies he knew about the money or where it came from. He admits to his moral failings, but insists he did not break the law.
Secret Service scandal involving Colombian prostitutes could result in more firings. The chairman of the House committee investigating the incident says the agency will deal with the situation. Representative Peter King of New York says he expects several more members of the Secret Service to be fired. So far, 6 people have lost their jobs because of the scandal. Another 5 remain on administrative leave.
The stock market took a tumble today. The Dow down 102 points to close just below 13,000. Traders are worried about Europe's financial health. New numbers out today show the debt in Europe continuing to pile up. All this despite drastic budget cuts and bailouts over there. And the weak economy in France may sink President Sarkozy.
And other European Union countries may need more bailouts. Some analysts warn that Europe is only postponing the day of reckoning. Dale Hurd has the story tonight from Brussels.
European finance ministers have been warned in an internal report that the Eurozone is still in trouble. And billionaire investor George Soros said recently the European debt crisis is getting worse and could even destroy the European Union.
A credit downgrade here, a loan guarantee there. What some economists still believe is the eventual death of the Eurozone drags out like a long terminal illness.
The EU is trying to erase huge deficits through cutbacks in government spending. That's only leading to riots and actually making the deficits bigger. A big problem is the economies of countries like Greece are weak, so the government isn't bringing in enough money in taxes to pay its bills. We asked economist Peter Marisi what advice he'd give the Europeans to fix this mess.
To dissolve the euro, for starters.
Marisi says the euro currency itself is the problem because its design is fatally flawed, and no bailouts or austerity programs can overcome that.
The euro is supposed to increase prospects for prosperity, and instead it's impoverishing these countries. These governments don't have the latitude they need to make economic policy, and as a consequence, they're failing.
The fatal flaw of the euro in a nutshell is that it's a one-size-fits-all currency for many different countries with very different economies. And that hurts relatively weak economies like Greece. They can't do what the U.S. does and turn to the Federal Reserve for help, because whatever helps Greece might hurt other countries in the Eurozone. So nations like Portugal, Spain, Italy, and Greece are trying to fight a war against debt without the weapons they need to win. And just getting loans doesn't help. That's trying to fight debt with more debt. And making it worse, the euro currency was launched without an exit strategy in case it failed.
I think Eurozone is trapped.
In Paris, French economist Nicolas Lacosten thinks trying to leave the euro now would be a fiscal disaster for France.
If you say it's no more euro, you can't. What are you going to do now? You choose the franc. Even Greece is not choosing the drachma yet, because it will be another fiscal collapse.
Marisi says Europe could and should just give up the euro, even if it causes short-term financial chaos, because it's already on the road to ruin.
Europe could easily slip into Great Depression-type conditions. In Spain, it's already near there.
And a depression in Europe would be very dangerous for a fragile American economy. Dale Hurd, CBN News, Brussels.
Coming up, remembering Chuck Colson. A look at the life and legacy of a man who took the gospel inside American prisons.
April the 10th, 1912, almost 100 years ago to the day, the most famous ship in recorded history set sail from Southampton, England, with 2,228 souls aboard. The ship's name? The Titanic, the unsinkable queen of the ocean. To commemorate this historic event, and one of the greatest stories ever told, the Sterlington Collection is honored to present the limited edition collectible Deep Romance pendant. This magnificent 14.5 carat faux Ceylon sapphire is hand set in stunning silver tone. The center stone is surrounded by a scintillating set of 20 flawless diamond Z4 crystals and is hung on a striking silver tone herringbone necklace. The beauty, luster and sparkle of this beautiful pendant and necklace is truly unsurpassed and surely destined to become a cherished family heirloom and a favorite in your jewelry collection. This timeless classic honors those that lost their lives and represents the enduring love symbolized by our Deep Romance pendant. The original is one of the most talked about gemstones in history, and in today's money will be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. The Sterlington Collection is proud to present this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to purchase the stunning Deep Romance pendant for the low price of $19.90. Quantities are extremely limited, and if you reserve yours today, you will also receive these magnificent replicas of Titanic memorabilia, including the White Star Line first-class menu, an advertisement for the infamous voyage, and one ticket for the Titanic, the finest steamer in the world. Order now, and you can also receive the striking Deep Romance ring, the perfect complement to your Deep Romance pendant. This collection of jewels and memorabilia is only available for a limited time, so call or click to reserve yours today.
Call 1-800-396-0936 and get your Deep Romance pendant. But hurry, callers can get a special offer on a matching ring with today's orders. So call 1-800-396-0936 and find out about free shipping. That's 1-800-396-0936. Call now.
Well, Chuck Colson is being remembered as a towering figure in the evangelical movement.
Colson died Saturday at the age of 80. He touched thousands through practical outreach to prisoners and their families. Charlene Israel looks back at how he reached the world through his intellect.
Charles Wendell Chuck Colson was born in Boston, Massachusetts on October 16, 1931. He was a child of the Great Depression.
That was tough. I mean, I got used to being poor. I never knew what it was. I never knew we were poor because it was just the way we lived. Mm-hmm. My dad was going to school at night. He was working very hard at a job, making $32 a week, and we would share with people in need on the block who didn't have as much as we had.
Despite those humble beginnings, Colson went on to graduate from Brown University and earned a law degree from George Washington University. He also served as a captain in the United States Marine Corps and eventually landed a job at the White House in the Nixon administration. But that's when his promising career took an ominous turn. Colson was soon caught up in the Watergate scandal as President Nixon's infamous hatchet man. In the midst of that turmoil, in 1973, Colson became a Christian after reading the book Mere Christianity by evangelical author C.S. Lewis. He was indicted in 1974 when news of his conversion leaked to the press. The Boston Globe reported, "If Mr. Colson can repent of his sins, there just has to be hope for everybody." Colson admitted he was guilty of political dirty tricks and was willing to do almost anything for the cause of his president and his party.
I was stripped of everything, public enemy number one, and thrown into a prison.
He served 7 months at Maxwell Prison in Alabama. As he walked into freedom, he promised fellow inmates he would never forget those behind bars. He talked about his experience on the 700 Club over the years.
Well, I thank God now, Pat, that I went through it, and because I carry with me a really heavy burden for the men who are and women who are in prison.
That burden led Colson to establish Prison Fellowship. It's an international ministry working in more than 100 countries, committed to prison reform and prisoner rehabilitation.
With the prison population exploding and with the crime rate just soaring, we're not dealing with the root causes of crime. So we're just putting men in cages, we're treating them like animals, and then we expect them to come back out and be rehabilitated. So there's one way, and that's when a man turns his life over to Jesus Christ.
Colson also became a prolific commentator on the popular culture. He wrote more than 30 books, selling more than 5 million copies, and was a sought-after public speaker. In his books, he often stressed the importance of a Christian worldview.
It won't do for us to just sit in our sanctuaries, entertain ourselves, sing our happy clappies, and feel good about ourselves. This is a time for the church to engage the world, and it has to be done through the church.
In the end, the only thing that mattered to Chuck Colson was having a right relationship with Jesus Christ and ministering the grace he received with as many people as possible.
I live every day to the fullest because I can live it for Christ. And I know no matter what I do today, whether it's just in maybe it's just in my prayer time, I'm going to do something to advance the kingdom of God. Now, does that make you fulfilled? You bet it does. And it gives you joy about living.
Charlene Israel, CBN News.
Prison Fellowship CEO Jim Lyski spoke with CBN News about Colson's life. He says that breaking the spiral of silence will be remembered as Colson's greatest legacy.
He talked about believers being able to work in a manner on a day-to-day basis, just like the early church, and caring for people, serving people, doing things for others, as he said, and being able to build the right to come forward with the great proposal of the gospel, and to do so in a manner that was not shrill and was not argumentative, proposing the gospel, proposing the invitation to the great banquet. Chuck spent his life breaking that spiral of silence, starting with, the issue of incarceration, which many of us didn't want to talk about when he began 35 years ago and still struggle to talk about today. For 2.3 million men and women in our country who are incarcerated, inside the walls is their local church. That's their Jerusalem. And Chuck called on us and those inmates to be active in the gospel right where they live, whether it be in a cell or out in our neighborhoods. He called us out of, if you would, the soft pews into the public square, out where ministry needs to happen, out where people are hurting, so that we can be engaged in being the gospel of Jesus, not just talking about the gospel of Jesus.
And to see that full interview with Jim Lyski and to get to hear more reaction from around the world on Chuck Colson's legacy, go to our website at cbnnews.com. And a personal reflection on the life of Chuck Colson. In 1993, I was working as a news anchor for a local television station in Jacksonville, Florida. I was suspended from my job and eventually fired for speaking out about media bias. That story drew national attention, and one of the first people to contact me was Chuck Colson. He wanted to let me know that he appreciated my stance. He prayed for me, mentioned me on his radio broadcast, and later invited me to a small dinner gathering. By God's good providence, our paths crossed several times since then, and I've never forgotten the kindness he showed me. I will miss him and greatly admired him. We'll be right back.
If you have diabetes and you're on Medicare, call now for a new pain-free meter. These new meters are more accurate, they're easier to use, and the best news is you don't have to prick your fingers anymore. Call now, and Arriva Medical will send you one of these new meters for free. And if you have Medicare, your testing supplies may also be covered. Arriva makes it simple. They bill Medicare directly. There are no upfront costs. And they deliver your supplies right to your door for free. With these new meters, there's no coding, you don't have to prick your fingers, and some of these meters even talk.
Your blood glucose reading is 122.
And if you call 1-800-284-9762, we will send you a free Betty Crocker Diabetes Cookbook filled with delicious recipes.
Call Arriva today. You'd be glad you did.
Believe it or not, this is a catheter. It's the new SpeediCath Compact for women. Now available from Liberator Medical with full Medicare and private insurance reimbursement. Stay tuned for an exciting free offer. But first, meet Julie.
You know when you leave the house and you say, okay, I have my phone, I have my keys, I have my wallet, I'm good to go. Now I always have to think of a catheter because I can't go without it. SpeediCath came into my life and it is life-changing. They're tiny and thin, and you can fit them in your back pocket. You can fit them anywhere you need them. This is a lipstick or lip gloss, and this is the size of it. With this, you're only touching the outer plastic, and you're never actually in contact with the catheter itself. You just really have to give a sample. That's all it needs is one sample, and everyone's going to want them.
Now, here's that free offer I promised. Call Liberator Medical. Get your free SpeedyCath Compact. Sample 6-pack. Shipping is free. 1-800-595-1446. 1-800-595-1446.
Obesity in the U.S. is becoming a costly epidemic to the body as well as the wallet. It can cause heart disease, cancer, diabetes, and maybe even cause autism.
Wow, it also costs an obese person almost $3,000 more per year on medical costs than a regular weight person. Doctors say much of this could be avoided if we would de-sweeten our diet. Lori Johnson explains in tonight's Focus Report.
Americans live the sweet life. Our diet contains enormous amounts of sugar, and often we don't even know it. That's because it's hidden in places you'd never suspect. It's added to everything from salad dressing to peanut butter, even bread. In the year 1800, the average American consumed about 18 pounds of sugar the entire year. In 1900, it jumped to 90 pounds. Today, most of us consume 156 pounds a year. Cardiologist Stephen Sinatra says all of this sugar causes the insulin in our bodies to go haywire, often leading to heart disease, America's #1 killer.
Sugar does damage to the body. And it's one of the major factors for the insulin-resistant syndrome we're seeing in this country, especially in young kids.
Over the years, not only has the amount of sugar we eat changed, so has the type of sugar. More than 40 different varieties of sugar flood our food supply. But the granddaddy of them all is high fructose corn syrup.
And the problem is it's in everything today. You know those soups you get in restaurants and they give you those little crackers? It's in the crackers, it's in spaghetti sauces, it's in ketchup. It's everywhere.
Sinatra joins a number of scientists warning that high fructose corn syrup, or HFCS, is even worse than table sugar.
Well, it's foreign to the body.
He says our bodies metabolize HFCS differently than other sugars, which over time can poison the liver.
I really worry about high fructose corn syrup. It's becoming part of our culture, and it just shouldn't be.
Dr. Dana Flavin agrees. She specializes in toxicology and says HFCS disables our brain's off switch, so we always want more.
And what happens is when you have high fructose corn syrup and you're consuming it for several days, you start to get a whole change in what they call leptins and ghrelins. Those are regulators of appetite. So you're wondering why you're still hungry and your body's not saying, oh, I'm full, I can't eat anymore, because of this change in these leptins and ghrelins. And they've been measured and they've found this beyond a doubt. So we know that it really alters satiation, so you eat more, you drink more.
HFCS manufacturers object and say their product is no worse than table sugar. They hope to improve their product's image and change its name to corn sugar.
Was that whether it's corn sugar or cane sugar, your body can't tell the difference. Sugar is sugar.
They're biochemically, metabolically, nutritionally equivalent.
Dr. Arthur Frank is the medical director of the George Washington University Weight Management Program.
High fructose corn syrup is every bit as bad for the diet as sucrose, table sugar. It's every bit as bad, but it's not worse. It's the equivalent of. It's not a good food. It's not something that you would want to encourage people to eat, but it serves an important purpose in the American diet because it's a sweetener.
The American Medical Association appears to agree, stating it's unlikely that HFCS contributes more to obesity than table sugar. On the other hand, Princeton researchers found that lab rats with access to HFCS gained significantly more weight than those with access to table sugar, even though both groups took in the same number of calories. Their conclusion: some people have claimed that high fructose corn syrup is no different than other sweeteners when it comes to weight gain and obesity. But our results make it clear that this just isn't true. So while there's no definitive answer about the value of high fructose corn syrup versus other sweeteners, one thing is certain: regardless of the type of sugar, we're consuming too much of it. Most of us eat 22 teaspoons of added sugar a day. The American Heart Association recommends only 6 teaspoons a day for women and 9 for men. How much is that? Just one 12-ounce soft drink contains about 9 teaspoons of sugar. A good rule of thumb would be to check a product's list of ingredients. If a sugar is one of the first 3 ingredients, put it back. And remember, all sugars are high in calories, so even healthy ones like honey should be consumed in small amounts. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
If you have diabetes and you're on Medicare, call now for a new pain-free meter. These new meters are more accurate, they're easier to use, and the best news is you don't have to prick your fingers anymore. Call now, and Arriva Medical will send you one of these new meters for free. And if you have Medicare, your testing supplies may also be covered. Arriva makes it simple. They bill Medicare directly. There are no upfront costs. And they deliver your supplies right to your door for free. With these new meters, there's no coding, you don't have to prick your fingers, and some of these meters even talk.
Your blood glucose reading is 122.
And if you call 1-800-284-9762, we will send you a free Betty Crocker Diabetes Cookbook filled with delicious recipes.
Call Arriva today. You'd be glad you did.
Believe it or not, this is a catheter. It's the new SpeediCath Compact for women. Now available from Liberator Medical with full Medicare and private insurance reimbursement. Stay tuned for an exciting free offer. But first, meet Julie.
You know when you leave the house and you say, okay, I have my phone, I have my keys, I have my wallet, I'm good to go? Now I always have to think of a catheter because I can't go without it. SpeediCath came into my life and it is life-changing. They're tiny and thin and you can fit them in your back pocket. You can fit them anywhere you need them. This is a lipstick or lip gloss and this is the size of it. With this, you're only touching the outer plastic and you're never actually in contact with the catheter itself. You just really have to give a sample. That's all it needs is one sample and everyone's going to want them.
Now, here's that free offer I promised. Call Liberator Medical. Get your free SpeediCath Compact sample 6-pack. Shipping is free. 1-800-595-1446. 1-800-595-1446.
Law enforcement across Nevada and California were bombarded this weekend by reports of a terrifying explosion. Some described it like a gunshot. Others said it was like an earthquake.
Yeah, well, it is the Wild West. Well, it turns out it was neither. The reported fireball that streaked across the sky was actually a meteor. Astronomers believe the meteor hit the Earth's surface within a 600-mile radius of the Sierras.
We were all just getting up, getting ready to get the day going, and all of a sudden we heard a loud bang.
I heard that there was a loud sonic boom.
It's rare to see and hear a fireball, and this was very clearly heard, and the breakup of it was very, very clearly heard. I'm fairly certain that's what that was.
The fireball hit just after the peak of the annual meteor shower.
Wow.
Love to see that.
That would get your attention, wouldn't it?
That's all for this edition of NewsWatch.
Good day.
Good night.